So this all looks like multiple periods of 7 years. But note, they're all related to each other. They're all connected by sevens. So they're not standing out like little islands, but they're all connected step by step in patterns of 7. And they're all reflecting large shifts in the direction of true Christianity. Now again, looking back at 457, the third decree, we know that that's the 70 weeks, the first portion from 457 BC to 34 AD. And then looking as it relates to the 1260-year papal rule and its end, again, all connected by 7. Again, looking at 457, looking forward to the Jewish era fulfilled. Again, 490 years, 7 times 70, or the 70 weeks. Paul begins his ministry to the Gentiles. Up to the beginning of the papal rule in 538 is also 490 years. And you say, well, why 48? Is that when Paul began his ministry to the Gentiles? Paul's conversion, shortly after Stephen was stoned, until 48 is 14 years. Again, let's look at the beginning of the 1260-year papal rule. Going to 1028, bunch of questions. We're leaving that for those watching to find the answer. We're not sure. But there must be something important, because it's 490 years to that point. And if you go 490 years from that point, takes it to Luther before Augsburg, or in Augsburg, I should say. And you just add on another 490 years. And where do you think that takes us to? 2008. Again. U.S. enacting the first national Sunday law. Big steps here. Big changes. How can the 490 be that consistent? Let's look at transitional Rome. The Edict of Milan, I mentioned it a moment ago, 313. And then the St. Peter's Basilica in Constantinople dedicated in the same year in 330. And St. Peter's Basilica was basically the first building constructed where the Vatican is today. And the papal supremacy beginning in 538. Well, in 313, what happened? Actually, in the following year, remember, Constantine chose between the different groups that were split in the church. He gave them power, and the seat was given to them in 330. And then in 538, they received great authority. That period was 17 years, while this is 208. It doesn't look like anything special there, except when you look at this total time period to transitional United States. The U.S. final peace treaty with England occurred in 1783. For some reason, we think in 1776, the Declaration of Independence, and the war lasted a year. 2 years, we were done. No, they were fighting. Finally, England left in 1783. The White House, the first structure, again, just like St. Peter's Basilica, was completed and dedicated in 1800. And again, looking at 2008, the possibility of enacting a first national Sunday law, what do we have? 17 years and 208 years. They're exactly the same. Beginning of the papal 225-year period. Now let's look at the beginning of that. We have the church appealing to Constantine, the church receiving judicial authority, and the Roman Sunday law. We saw this earlier, 4 and 3. Let's look at the beginning of the U.S. 225-year period just shown. Thomas Jefferson brought the issue of slavery before Congress to free the slaves. The U.S. Constitution, ratified in 1788, and the U.S. Bill of Rights, ratified in 1791, giving us the freedom of worship. It is 4, 3. Look at the parallel here. One is leading toward control of conscience. The other is leading toward the freedom of conscience. The exact opposite. Now again, looking at the beginning, church appeals to Constantine. Let's compare this to the end of the U.S. 225-year time period shown. in 2001, the United States enacted the Patriot Act. And for those that think that gave us freedom, I think they're mistaken. 3 U.S. presidents kneel before a dead pope in 2005. Again, U.S. Sunday law enacted. It is a 4-3. Once again, that was shown earlier. There's a reflection. Note the present track of the United States leading toward the control of individual conscience. So now at the end of this period, we're not leaning toward freedom. We're leaning toward the very methodology of Rome. The same. The Edict of Milan, 313. Constantine the Great champions the Christians' cause. Was it not true that George Bush was elected to champion the Christians' cause? Same thing in 2000. It divides by 7, almost as if God has... Remember how the Bible says, I set up kings, I take down kings? Interesting. The U.S. Bill of Rights was ratified and we were given freedom of religion in 1791. If it's overturned in 2008, is there a relationship? Yes, it is. Again, on God's clock, God's watch. It divides by 7. How about the cult, New World Order, strategy? We read this in many books having to do with supposedly a secret society involved in overthrowing this country. I think as we look at current events around us, you can't help but wonder at the plausibility of this and the truthfulness of this. In 1888, they attempted a Sunday law, and as we've been saying, is it going to be a national Sunday law in 08? That's the question. We know we'll have to see what the relationship and how it happens. Let's look what the total happens. We know it's 120 years. In 1913, the U.S. Federal Reserve Act came into existence. It's not pro-America, it's anti-America, basically subjecting America to international banking, where the internationals create our money. It was supposed to be our government, according to the Constitution, to print our own money, which Abraham Lincoln fought so dearly for to protect us from. That right was given up and given into private companies. That was sad. There goes the economic for the United States. The political came a short time later, in 1948, when the United States joined the United Nations. Now, I know that the United Nations was dedicated and founded in 1945, but it wasn't until 3 years later that America united with them. We know Ambassador was sent to the Vatican in 83. Is this going to be a religious connection? Is this the next strategy? If you have somebody economically, politically, and religiously, guess what? You've got them completely. And we know that the nation of Israel was created in 1948. So how do these relate? Well, 60 and 60, that's odd. It's right in the middle. Further, there's 25 years to the Federal Reserve Act from 1888. 35 years going on to the middle. 35 and 25. 100% symmetrical. And we know that the total again is 120. 1788, again looking at the U.S. Constitution being ratified. Compare this to 1844, the cleansing of the sanctuary. What happened in 1844? Protestants did what? They rejected the light of the first angel. Came under the condemnation of the second angel. They began to worship at a throne that Satan had taken his seat upon as Christ moved into the most holy place. So there was, you could say, a whittling down. God was calling out a special people to bring a special message. What happens here? If we have a first National Sunday Law in 08, and we know there's 4 years in between there, we know that in 1788, the U.S. government was fully implemented. The first president was elected. It was operational, as we could say. If the United States history should end 4 years beyond 08, look at this correlation. 56 years, up to 1844. From 1844 to 2012 is 3 times 56. It's in quarters. Could be just luck, could be just chance, but I hope that those watching are seeing that this is happening over and over and over again. and the total divides nicely by 7.